So, today we're going to maybe try to get behind the secret sunglasses. That's what I'm thinking.
So I will do everyone a favor and take them off for you so you can get a peek behind the curtain for just a moment. But I'm excited to be here with you, Matthew, because I seriously feel like the first half of my professional life was way more about the tangible stuff, the technical knowledge, learning how to put things together and take them apart, what drives it, like just really getting deep into even some of the products out there. But the more gray I get, or the more that some of it falls out, or whatever's happening up there, I do feel that the most recent half of my professional career has been a lot more about the intangibles and not necessarily what you say, but how you say it and what other people hear and how they can take action on it. And yes, I work in the people business. So when you talk about human resources functions and things like that, a lot of it can be very intangible and very conceptual that people have, a very hard time sometimes grasping where some of the black, white, and gray come into play.
Well, I was gonna start out our session today by pointing out, that your show is called Always Friday, um, and but that this unscripted podcast that we're having, today, is more like Fly Day. It's more like on the
On the
fly.
fly day, I like that.
Yeah. So today's, it is Friday, but we're on the fly day. So I think, to start us out, um, I'd like to on the fly kind of have a sense of who is this guy behind the glasses. We've got this really cool podcast, and that's how we've come to know each other through our respective work on talkradio.nyc. But I understand there actually is a guy with another career and who does a bunch of other things. So who is this Stephen Fry guy?
That's a great question. I feel like I've been asking that for a while. And shout out to Logan, who was just on my show, Logan the engineer, who is saying, "I'm telling you, Intangify. That's what this needs to be." But just like I talk about on a weekly basis, I'm very big on the idea of people first. Focusing on a good process together will typically lead you to the right end product, not the other way around. I can't tell you how often I see it out there myself. I talk to business owners who are looking at some type of product, service, technology, new app, magic wand that they think is gonna solve all of their problems. And it just doesn't exist out there. Everything begins with people. So to take you way back, I was always a people person. I have a very decent sized family, a lot of cousins, and around a lot of people always, right? So for me, what I think of when I think about where being a people person really started out was when I was about 2 years old, and I do remember this. I do have a weird memory for someone who's partied as much as I have in 43 years. But when I was 2 years old, I used to line family members up at family events like it was Family Feud, like two teams competing against each other. And just like old host Richard Dawson back in the early 80s, when I was, getting my legs out under me, I would walk up to all of the ladies and kiss them on the cheek and ask them the questions. So I knew that I was always going to be really oriented towards people from a very, very young age. I went to the University of Maryland at College Park, which so did my wife. So did a bunch of my cousins who had surrounded me their entire lives. So make no mistake, it was a very, very decent party at the University of Maryland. So we had a good time. But I also went to the University of Maryland Business School, Robert H. Smith School of Business, and I was a double major, which at the time, before I got to college, I wanted to be a doctor. And I knew that I wasn't going to stay in school for that long and deal with everything that doctors needed to do. I wanted to get out there and start working and making money somehow. So I decided to go to the business school. And my double major, the first one had a really long title. It said Decision and Information Sciences and Management Science and Statistics. It's abbreviated nowadays to Information Systems for Business Services. But I equate that with the very process-oriented side of my brain, which has a lot to do with systematic scalability and be as efficient as possible, do more with less, constant improvement, concept of Kaizen, all of that. And then my other major was finance, which, I do have securities licenses and insurance licenses, and I've spent a lot of time in and around that space with strategic partners. But I always think of finance as, helping people figure out where they are, where they want to go, and plot them the course that's needed to get there. And a lot of times that does involve placing them in certain products and being licensed to sell certain products. However, being a product slinger, really doesn't work. It doesn't give people what they need typically. It's usually reverse engineered that way, where if you just throw a product at somebody without really getting to know the person or what makes them tick, it's probably not going to work for them. So, but I do consider it very important when you're talking about finance and you're talking about money and you're talking about people's comfort level, whether it's an individual person or an individual business, which a lot of small, medium-sized businesses have their own kind of individual identity. You have to get a feeling for what people are comfortable with and what their ultimate goals look like. So it's taken me, Matthew, almost this long to articulate what I was doing back then with my majors and what I was in school for. But these days, I feel like it's very clear to me why I was doing what I was doing and how I was doing it. I say at the beginning of every one of my shows, I believe very strongly in sharing stories, providing perspective, and creating connection. That's it. Sharing stories is what unites us as people guy first. Providing perspective is a little bit of a process of storytelling, especially dependent on one's experience, right? Once you have a little bit of mileage and a little bit of gray hair, you can talk a little bit about some of the travels, not in the guise of, look what I've done and what you haven't, I'm better than you. Like, that's always the wrong way to kind of relay messages, I feel like. But in the guise of, may I share a story with you? You might actually appreciate it given what you've just told me. And, really help people connect. That's where we can really meet in the middle with everyone that we deal with, whether it's a personal or a business level. And the same kind of thing with products, right? They change every day in everything that we do. So if you have the right people around you, the right trusted advisors, the right family members, like, whoever really gravitates, towards you for help and partnership with your goals and initiatives, you'll end up in the right products when you need them. You got to be people first, and you got to have a good focus on what you're really trying to accomplish.
I love that, and want to get into it a little bit deeper. I literally have like my doorman buzzing me and telling me I have to get the repairman to let in. So we're going to go to an early break, and I'm going to come off camera. You've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back.
It's okay. The landscaping guy was just there. Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mara Bronku, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 1 p.m. Eastern on Fridays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Aspel, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies, from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
welcome back to Intangify. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. My guest is Stephen Fry, who is none other than the host of Always Friday, the show that appears before mine on Fridays at 11 a.m. On talkradio.nyc. But Stephen's got some other lives and other professions. And as he told you before the break, he's very much about people and people first. The product comes really only afterwards. And I want to talk about. So, Stephen, I want to ask you to actually talk a little bit about what you actually do as your day job.
Yes, I'm ready for you. Don't worry, I promise.
But I also want you to talk a little bit about all the different things you do in at the same time, because that's what I'm experiencing right now. Literally, during the break, I have people coming to my door to make repairs in my apartment. I've got clients sending me emails. I've got my mother calling me on the phone.
Well, my mom knows better than to call me during showtime. So she might call me because this isn't my slot; it's yours. She might call me in 20 minutes or so and just be like, "Hey, how was your show?" I'm still going. Sorry.
We could feature her if she shows up. But there's this element of sort of being in two places at once that I get myself into all the time. So would love to hear about, how you are managing sort of all of the different walks of life that you have, and particularly what your main day job is.
There's this old Polish saying, my ancestry, German, Russian, Romanian, Polish, with one ass, a man can't dance at two weddings. But, nowadays, almost everybody is, right? Everybody's got, their passion projects, their side hustle, their 9 to 5, whatever. And what's exciting to me, especially these days with my 9 to 5, my full-time job, is that it's exactly what I am and who I want to be. And like the mantra behind it is great. My company is Engage PEO and the tagline is expect more. I'm vice president of sales. Most of my jobs along the way have revolved around sales strategy and business development and nationwide distribution. And this is really just like that. Engage is a professional employer organization. So it handles the administrative burden on behalf of small and medium-sized businesses nationwide. So when I talk about administrative burden, I mean things like payroll processing and certain types of human resource functions, designing employee handbooks, benefits consulting and administration, such as 401k retirement planning, group health insurance, risk and compliance work using workers' compensation and other types of insurance policies from both a state and a federal basis. But, one thing that, really is a big differentiator of Engage, Matthew, and you'll appreciate this, being what your core job is. You're a partner at Offutt Kerman, right? You're an attorney at law. All of the folks who are human resources consultants at Engage are licensed attorneys. It's a huge differentiator for other folks in the industry, right? So every business that comes on board with Engage, they get, let's call it a 5-person team assigned to them, right? Dedicated team. They have a payroll specialist to help them with the payroll function, which is a weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly business operating expense and necessity needs to be done, right? You'll have a benefits consultant, which we don't have nationalized healthcare here. Having health benefits is crucial for the employees that we have for our small, medium-sized businesses, because if they're not healthy and can't come to work, you don't have employees, right? You need to have them. So there's a safety and loss control specialist, right? So for things like workers' compensation, right? There's filing claims for that. Somebody who can help not only with the workers' compensation claims, but help design an OSHA safety manual and help with things like OSHA compliance, occupational safety and health requirements. Like, these are big things that certain labor-intensive businesses really need to be conscious of. You have a point person dedicated account manager who, if you can't find the specialists at any time for any reason, the account manager can be contacted for any and all things Engage. And then last but definitely not least is you have that HR consultant. So the HR consultant, who's a licensed attorney, not only someone who's knowledgeable from a state and federal level, but in many cases has actively litigated employment matters. So these are a lot of things that a lot of times small, medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs, they don't go into business to deal with payroll and to deal with benefits. They go into business because they're passionate about something or because they have some type of very special skill, like being an attorney or being a brain surgeon. I know sometimes you might feel like being an attorney is brain surgery while you wait. I get that. But this is when you're talking with entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses and family-owned businesses, like a lot of times it's their baby. It's something that really is a part of their being. And that's why the world of people is so fascinating to me, because I could go meet with 10 different intellectual property attorneys, right? And if I ask them, what do you do for a living? If I ask all 10 of them, I'm going to get a relatively similar list of services and response, right? I might not get the resume that you have, Matthew, because I started looking at it the other day in preparation for our show together. And oh my God, like there's a lot of places that you've been and a lot of things you've done. But, by and large, the same type of end products and function and services that are provided, they're going to be very similar. But if you start getting deeper with the people, like what drives you? How did you get where you are today? Like when I ask on my show, give me the founder's journey. Like, what's that like? Every one of them is going to have a little bit of a different story of how they got going and a little bit of a different story of what's motivating them and a little bit of a different story around all their employees and what kind of, trials and tribulations and things have kept them up at night and war stories they could share with you. But it's just to see how some of those people make decisions and really what they prioritize at what times for what reason is actually a very fascinating study of, I don't know if you call it anthropology or sociology, but I call it the people business. And that's why it's all about the people first. And a lot of times when you're talking about things like payroll and insurance, it can be commoditized in this day and age. And that's one thing that drives me up a wall. And really, again, like every business owner, they want to save time and money always. I always say to people, I say it on my show, you've probably heard me say it, aside from making lots and lots of money and revenue year over year and making sure that everybody could sleep at night, business owners, as it relates to their business, they have three things on their mind at all times. They have on their mind operating expenses, taxes, and health insurance. And these are a lot of the things that I help folks with on a day-to-day basis. And while it might be commoditized in some ways, all of them have different needs around it. All of them have different people that work for their organizations that dictate what health insurance rates they might get. So I love it when people ask me something like, oh, so what are your rates? And I look at them almost in disbelief and go, I don't know until I look at all the stuff that really describes you as an individual company, like an individual person. When you go to get a mortgage, do you just say, what are your rates? I know that there are people out there who do that still, even though the last time I was a mortgage broker was 20 years ago. That was one of the travels along the way. They expect like a concrete black and white answer to something where they can never possibly get it until certain due diligence has been done. Same thing with life insurance. What are your rates? I don't know until I underwrite you for it.
So we're going to go to another break early, and this is going to enable us to not have, a break and have an extended conversation without much interruption. So bear with me. But you've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Intangify. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. Our guest is Stephen Fry, the host of Always Friday, and also from Engage, who handling with employee benefits and all sorts of various needs for small businesses. I'm very pleased to say I should not have any further interruptions. The program should not be distracted. I'm not going to have to be in two places at once for the rest of this show. I'm thankful for, and because we had our second break early, we can go a little while longer. So
it's actually made me think of something. One of my cousins actually is CEO of a company called Intangify, Distractify.
I don't need any help being distracted. But
I thought you were going to sneak some Halloween candy, man. I'm not hating on that.
I can't admit to that. So it's not on live broadcast. But before the break, Stephen, you were talking about your work and Engage, and as I was listening to sort of all the different aspects of what you're handling, payroll and employee benefits related stuff, insurance, etc., I was reminded as to why I did not launch my own law firm.
Yes, the biggest issue that business owners consistently have is employees
and all the stuff needed for them, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
There's a tremendous amount of stuff that has to be handled, and I would guess that for people like me who were going to launch their own small firm or something like that, they would readily need services like what you offer, but more importantly, as you said, they have to connect with the guy behind the glasses before they worry about, how much does it cost.
100%. And that's a lot of times what my day is spent doing, is connecting with the guy behind the glasses, not just with the end user clients, which obviously takes up plenty of time, but very much with the referral sources as well. So referral sources being other folks who are trusted advisors to small and medium-sized businesses. Excuse me. So that's why when I'm doing my show, I'm interviewing small, medium-sized business leaders, as well as the folks who really give them guidance. So your financial advisors, your insurance brokers, your accountants, your intellectual property attorneys, your management consultants, your franchise consultants, all of these types of folks act as trusted advisors to small and medium-sized businesses. So again, like a lot of times my approach will be through some of these strategic partners who are trusted advisors, and it'll almost be teed up in a wholesale type of fashion where I'm their go-to solution as a trusted advisor to the trusted advisor to work together and partner to really bring home the right result for the company, for the client in question. And I love being called in that way. Again, I do have securities and insurance licensing. I'm not like crazy competing with folks who do financial advisory work or insurance brokering. I like to consider it more like a geek translator type of capability where I understand that world well, and sometimes I can bridge certain gaps between those financial advisors, insurance brokers, and the end user clients that we're all trying to work with together. So I consider that to be a very value added type of position. But, I also consider the perspective and the time served and tenure at this point to be a very valuable perspective. Not at this point because of, like we had discussed before, not just because of the technical knowledge or industry knowledge, which, again, I'm big on that stuff. So I always read up. I'm keeping current with things that are going on out there. but also some of the ways of actually translating some of the information to other folks. When I talk about differentiating the Engage world, and also we've Engage has some private equity partners as well who have helped fuel some acquisitions in the last couple of years. So since early 2022, we've acquired 5 companies, including one in New Jersey that I've had a lot of direct hands-on experience with, called Fusion Employer Services, now an Engage company. So there's a lot of great growth, a lot of things going on within the company itself, but just the way that we're positioned for the marketplace, ability to differentiate and tell the best story. Telling the story is a lot of what drives me these days. Again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and it's what the other side of the table hears. So very often I'll get asked, a lot of times it's a privately held company. Not everybody knows Engage, not everybody knows Fusion. It's a local company here in central New Jersey, by the Princeton Lawrenceville area, right? They'll ask me to differentiate, like, what are the differences between all of these companies? Like, why should I choose one over the other? And that's a very legitimate question to really get to know who the players are in the market and why. Now, I'm a very big believer in not bashing competition. It's to me, it's more of an educational process. Uplift, educate, and empower. That's what Talk Radio NYC is all about. But I'm very much like, I'm about engagement as well. And we talked about it in my show with Logan just now, but being engaged is whether you're doing work that I do with Engage PEO and talking to referral sources and end user clients, or you're on the network at Talk Radio NYC hosting Always Friday or Intangify, you're looking for engagement. And nothing gets people more engaged than a story that they can relate to. So when I go to talk about my company these days, I asked the person, I said, do you remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And a lot of times they smile and say yes, right? It might be if I'm asking some of the Gen Z folks, I don't know if that's still popular in Gen Z, but yes, most people I've spoken to, they remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So, when I when I say, well, back when I started, it was basically like choice of 2 big vendors. Like, it was like the Coke and Pepsi of the payroll industry and the human capital management industry. And, those 2 companies, Paychex and ADP. I worked for Paychex for 10 years. A lot of great friends and a lot of great clients and a lot of great experience came along with that. That was my longest 10-year job I had along the way. But also, like, I would say just the intensity of the volume and the number of clients they had and the number of meetings I had in New York City and the boroughs, it gave me so much exposure that's really hard to get off of a syllabus or off of an extended schooling type of class and degree or designation. It's like, if you see 500 to 600 business owners a year for 10 years, that's a lot of different folks that might be talking about the same products and services, but they're all going to engage, no pun intended, with it for different reasons. They'll all have a different reason for buying a conceptual platform like a PEO or an HR outsourcing platform. Again, a lot of things with HR are not black and white. There's definitely some gray there. And if you're looking for certain types of savings, like cutting a line item, you don't always get it by looking at just things in black and white. Like, there are studies that go back a number of years at this point that show, engaging a platform like Engage or another PEO or another payroll HR outsourcing vendor can have an ROI of upwards of 27% to the business owner. Like, when you start putting that kind of number around it, it's significant. Like, it's for every dollar you spend in that, you can get a 27-cent return on it. That's great. But to take it back, I say, do you remember the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears? This porridge is too hot, this porridge is too cold, and this porridge is just right. Well, that's a lot of the way that I look at the industry nowadays, and it's a lot of how I know and feel that I'm in the right place, and for what my clients need these days. So when I think of too hot, I think of the big publicly traded companies that are out there, and those 2 names I mentioned before are not the only ones anymore. There's a slew of more publicly traded ones at this point. But when you're dealing with the publicly traded entities, there's a lot of numbers involved, and a lot of times those numbers involved are how, like, the clients are viewed as numbers. The employees who work at these places are viewed as numbers. And although I stayed there for 10 years at the publicly traded one, which is the highest number for a 10-year for me, it wasn't because I liked the idea of feeling like a number and building only short-term relationships with clients because I only had to keep them on the service for 91 days to get paid. Like that wasn't about that. It was because the people that I had met, not just the high intensity and volume of the people like referral sources and end user clients I met, but the 15,000 or so people that worked at the company that I met and, saw across the country at all different points of the year and incentive trips. It was great. Like we had our own crew going. And even to this day, we still do, even if we all work at different places at this point. That's another reason, again, why it's so much about the people first to me. But I think of the publicly traded solutions as the too hot porridge. Then you have the opposite. You have the too cold porridge, which is the idea these days that anybody who has an idea about doing some type of line of business, even if it's in the human capital management side, they put together a 10-slide pitch deck of what they're thinking. There's absolutely no meat behind it. And they make a pitch to somebody who's got deep pockets and coffers, and they get $2 to $5 million to start up some type of business. And then they start building it and building their staff and spending all the money as fast as they possibly can so they can go out and raise more money. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of that going on right now, where a lot of times I see a common trend with them where what they're really trying to sell is subscription to their new product or their new software that they've started distributing. Again, like a lot of times, if they're a new cutting edge company, they might have some great technology, like some great user interfaces. We have competitors out there these days that have that, like something that looks, let's say, nicer than what we do. But it's nowhere near as functional as what we do because we have crazy amounts of experience behind us with the team that's working with us and the leadership that knows what clients over the last 30, 40 years have been asking for and in what order and chronology and at what level of importance for certain industries. And there's a lot of that know-how under the hood. When you have something that's, the cold porridge, that's like, hey, I have an idea for a new platform and they're building the plane in the air, so to speak. It's not always the most accommodating for the people executing their process with their employees. It might look good and it might be cheaper than some other things out there if it's technology enabled. Not always the best fit. And then you have the just right? The just right porridge, the one that you want has already cooled off. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It's not sludge. It's great, right? So Engage is a privately held company. Okay, so not publicly traded. We have about 80,000 worksite employees together, so it's not a small privately held company. It's got a lot of worksite employees that we represent. Presence in almost all 50 states, might be like 48 or something like that. But yeah, large presence around the country. The company's based in Florida. I'm, for all intents and purposes, I'm a remote employee. Like I live in central New Jersey, right? So I'm basically a remote employee for sales, strategy, business development. I run out and meet with everybody and they get to know the guy behind the glasses, whether it's their advisor or if it's the folks who are actually running the business. And yeah, it's like I run out day in, day out having these types of meetings. I have much better incentives, long-term incentives, like in perpetuity to work with my clients. So it's like I'm not only incentivized for 91 days. I want to make sure that they're good to go in perpetuity. We can also be a lot more flexible with the way that we custom tailor the suit because I'm not running into Men's Warehouse to buy one off the rack. I am having a private tailor come and measure me for what's needed. That's kind of the mentality with something like this is everybody has those different needs. They all have different census data. They all have different tenure that they've been in their respective industry. They all have different needs, wants, and wish lists. So when you can custom tailor the suit a little bit better, it's great. The level of experience amongst all the folks that I'm partnered with here, I want to say all of the sales folks even, they have at least 15 to 20 years experience in said industry working with the human capital management world. So it's great to kick around ideas just like it is at Talk Radio NYC with colleagues that really have seen a lot and know a lot about the business. Some of them are hung up on the idea of it's not what you say, it's how you say it, like I am, which I love. And some of them are the exact opposite, which just spew as much as they possibly know about the industry, which some people will latch onto here and there. But again, when you can tell the story, it makes it a lot easier. Just like you were saying, though, Offutt Kerman is not a small law firm. The place that you work at full time, there's hundreds of attorneys there. My wife, before she started working for the state, she's an attorney as well. Her firm in New York City was downtown. 217 Broadway was the building she was in, not far from our old apartment by the seaport. And her firm was two managing partners, her as an associate attorney, and two paralegals, basically. So, yeah, but all of these folks, whether it's Offutt Kerman or it's the small firm that my wife used to work at, they all have business operating expenses, taxes, and health insurance while they're trying to make their money and earn more revenue year over year. And, although Engage is not the big publicly traded company with 15,000, 60,000 employees, we're probably at about 300 or so right now, which is great. Being able to run this much work and these many worksite employees through our systems with this kind of staff is phenomenal. But it's, again, by no means a small company. Now, some of the companies that we are running around acquiring these days, which great timing for the leadership, like Jay Starkman, the owner of Engage, the founder, great guy. He's an attorney by trade. Originally he was an attorney many years ago. All of the HR consultants, like I said, all licensed attorneys. Most of the executive management team of the company, all licensed attorneys as well. So they have that kind of attorney lens to look at things through, which for the purposes of the world that I play in and that my colleagues play in is extremely, extremely valuable. Almost invaluable, really, as far as how this world operates these days. We live in a very litigious society, as you well know. So if you have, especially when you're talking about people's employment and labor discussions, if you're able to navigate that effectively, I always prefer to be the bomb diffuser than to be the cleanup crew. I'm trained in how to be the cleanup crew also, as are you. But I'd much rather defuse the bomb before it goes off. To look at as a comparison, for example, Fusion is a brand that we acquired last year, right about this time last year, September 2022. And, I work with them a great deal since they're based in New Jersey, and so am I. It's about 40 minutes away from my house. But again, this world that we live in these days, I'm a remote employee anyway. The work that we do, my colleagues do, it's, no problem. If I can't go to the office, it's no big deal. I was, when the pandemic happened and we were all kind of shackled to our computers and everything, I had done a fair amount of national distribution, national account work in the past. So I was part of small distribution teams that had to cover the whole country, which is a big backyard if you're trying to, do a good sales run. But it was very easy for me to make that kind of switch. It's something that I was kind of used to anyway, and was kind of doing virtual meetings along the way with the people I was commiserating with along the way, no matter what, over the last decade. But this, being in front of the computer all the time during the pandemic, that's when I started the show, September of 2000, right? September 2000, September of 2020. That would have been a real long time ago, right around college time. September of 2020. So that's when I started. I was like, it's something I always wanted to do. And just like, well, if I don't do it now, while I could basically make a studio out of one of the rooms in my basement, when the hell am I going to do it? So, but back to Fusion for a second. Fusion, they had, before we acquired them, it's about 25 employees. They have office space in Lawrenceville and the Princeton area. And let's say when we acquired them, they had about, 4,500 worksite employees that they were managing. But, our organization, Engage, very, very focused, especially following the pandemic, of looking at some of these more local mom and pop types of shops and companies, kind of like, if we're almost like an analogy, like the way my wife was working for her firm in the city was kind of like almost like Fusion in the human capital management world. And then what you're working at with Offutt Kerman is a little bit more like Engage. It's a little bit larger scale and larger client base and everything. I know that there's an analogy in there somewhere. I know that there's something to that, but yeah, I mean, different strokes for different folks. But overall, I call this the porridge that's just right when I'm talking to people about who I am and what I do, because it checks all of the boxes that personally I would want as a serial entrepreneur, small, medium-sized business owner along the way. It's like, I would want something that could be custom tailored for me. I would want something that could be really flexible. I would want something where I have that dedicated team supporting with specialty expertise all of the different main functions that come up on a daily basis when you're a business owner. That's, I look at what I used to do, and it's not that it's a bad company or anything like that. Again, I'm not I'm not a competition guy. Everyone's in business for a reason. It's a high intensity, high volume type of place. So that's how everything becomes a number if you're looking at publicly traded companies, right? For what I would want and for what I feel a lot of small, medium sized business owners want, a lot of the same reasons that they become entrepreneurs in the first place. I genuinely feel like these days I'm best positioned to do this, and with my company and with the type of work that I've been doing along the way with the small, medium sized businesses. It's like a perfect storm.
So, Steve, what I love about having you as a guest is you give me so much fodder to work with. And at the same time, it's troubling to me as to what direction to go in because I just don't have the time to do all the things that I want to cover with you. So
Well,
we're going to have some additional shows in the future, clearly.
So I know we got to take a break, but the direction I like to talk about going with everybody, which doesn't always get spoken about if people look at their jobs and if they're looked at as commodities, is growth. I love the idea of continuous improvement. It's part of that systemized type of methodology from back in the day, but the idea of continuous improvement and growth, I've never been more invested in that with my clients, that I work with at Engage, and with some of my other interests, passions, ventures, projects, whatever you want to call them. I've never been this incentivized and this excited to help companies grow. And really, they all need and want that. So it's there's no such thing as perfection, but in some ways I look at it as the perfect storm.
All right. Well, when we come back from our break, we'll revisit the topic of growth, but I have so much more that I want to talk to you about. We'll have to schedule some more shows.
I'm ready, baby. Let's go.
You've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc. We'll be right back.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Intangify. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. Our guest is Stephen Fry from Engage and Fusion, and also the podcast host of Always Friday. Today's Friday, so happy Friday and Fly Day to you all.
Like I say, it's always Friday with me.
And before the break, Steve, you gave a whole diatribe, and I put in the chat like 20 things that I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, we're gonna need like 13 more shows for this. What you put in the chat, yeah.
There's just gonna be an Intangify show, which will have the numerous musings of things we need to discuss. But you mentioned before the break really wanting to talk about growth and your focus on growth in recent years and that mindset. So I want to invite you to raise that topic further and share how you want to go into that.
Yeah. So, like I had mentioned, when you work for certain companies in the human capital management industry, the way that I have along the way, and when I say human capital management, HCM, it's revolves around, again, the business operating expenses, taxes, insurance needs of small, medium sized business. A lot of times, that is something that can be looked at as a commodity, as, yeah, I need to have this because someone told me I need to have it. It costs X amount. Can you save me 10, 20%? Yeah, great. Um, there's very little about positioning things that way that really makes it growth oriented. And when I was incentivized to keep a client on board for like 91 days as opposed to perpetuity, I didn't feel like I was long term invested in the growth of their company. I'm kind of long term. I was long term invested in the growth of my bank account, so I could go run around and talk to a million other people and sell them the goods and services and have it restart from zero the next year. But this, moving forward with a group like Engage Infusion in the world that I play in, being a flexible, being an attorney centric, having that legal lens kind of first and foremost for the industry, but being client centric at the same time, looking out for the clients in the way that a good fiduciary does in the financial services world. All of that to me lends itself to the continued growth of a company. And when you run around selling things like payroll and human resources systems and all the stuff that's related to the industry I've been in for 20 years now, it's, although again you might be talking about the same types of things with different businesses, each one of them is going to engage, no pun intended, each one of them is going to engage with it for a different reason. A lot of times when you're talking about a whole inclusive HR outsourcing type of platform like a PEO, like what we represent at Engage, it's a bundled solution. It's not nickel and diming, a la carting things the way a lot of vendors will out there. And thus, it can be very conceptual, right? It can be, hey, you're going to use maybe 30% of the services for the first couple of months, but you'll also knock out your primary, secondary, tertiary goals. Well, what happens after that is you want to focus on the stuff that's important to you a little later. So these types of platforms are built that way, where the client in question can not only custom tailor their suit for what they want, don't want, what's on their wish list, whatever. That can be kind of a moving target. It can be an editable document, if you will, of a timeline of services, of what they really need moving forward. When we start out with a company, they might have just organized their entity and first starting to hire employees. 5 years from now, they might be looking to sell their business. And my experience in this world, and with having securities licenses and insurance licenses and partnering with estate attorneys and accountants and all of that, these days, if it's not something that I deal with from the 9 to 5, I do have the right types of strategic partners who not only refer me business for Engage and for Fusion, but who I refer business to for things like estate planning and for real estate appraisals, commercial real estate appraisals for a new nursing home that they're building. And, again, just like we have our network at talkradio.nyc, where, you and I could talk to each other as hosts about, hey, why don't you do my show and I'll do your show? Like, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's a very similar type of idea. So, there's a lot of things that I have on the resume too, very similar to you, where I can list it and it'll be a mile-long introduction, for somebody to knock out. But the stories behind each one of them, like going on study abroad. I studied abroad in London my junior year of college, and it was something that I almost didn't do. Like, study abroad wasn't a huge focus at the University of Maryland, like other places in the country, other schools. But it took me a while to decide, and I thought I was going to miss a little something of my college years, but I decided to go. And the 6 months that I was abroad, I lived in London and traveled all of Europe. Like, I can't even describe how much I grew as a person, and what kinds of doors were open to me, and how my eyes were open to other places and cultures and customs and things like that. You talk about the intangibles of business on a daily basis and on a weekly basis here on this radio show, right? HR, aside from being like the package that I type to sell, can be very conceptual. The culture of a business, like even in some of the definitions of intangibles out there, the culture and perspectives of decision makers of business and of the work atmosphere of business, like these can be seen of valuable, these could be seen as valuable aspects of a business that are completely intangible. These days, if you ask a millennial, Gen Z, Gen Y, whatever they are named these days, right? If you ask them what's important to them when they're joining a new organization, years ago, they might have just came right out and said starting salary. Whoever pays me the most freaking money gets me. Nowadays, they'll say things like, whoever's got a retirement plan for me, whoever's helping me plan for my future, and wherever the work culture is great, wherever they have the work from home policy, 3 days a week out of the 5. It's like every now and then, like, a generation of people tends to change a little bit. Like, so, nowadays you have 10,000 baby boomers retiring a day from their 9 to 5s and from their businesses that they built. And you have this crazy slew of newer generation workers coming in that have a whole different set of priorities. So if you ignore that in favor of being commoditized and only focusing on saving time and money, whether you're a business owner, a trusted advisor to them, or you're a salesperson selling them the goods and wares that might lead to that, if you're just focused on that, chances are you're going to get replaced at some point, because everybody out there wants to save time and money, and everybody out there selling goods, wares, and services, they will claim to be able to save you time and money, including myself. I'm not going to outrightly say that. It's like, listen, if I can save a business owner time and money and their trusted advisor time and money, you can bet I'm going to do that. But I am also very, very interested and invested in what else can I do to help you grow? Sharing stories, providing perspective, and then creating connection. That's what I say at the beginning of each one of my shows as my superpowers. And to me, they relate to people, process, and product, right? Sharing stories is a people thing. Providing perspective is a process and experience oriented thing. And creating connection is the biggest product or service that I can give to somebody. It might be a connection with a service I directly represent, or a product I directly represent, or a financial or insurance thing that I directly represent because I have those licenses. It very often is not that. I'm a lot of times doing that through other folks who are trusted advisors and offering my geek translation services. But it's the biggest product is creating connection. And creating connection to me is really about connecting with a person, not a product necessarily. But it's, even if it's the ultimate at the end of the rainbow is a product or a service, it's creating a connection with the person, aside from me, that they created the connection with, who can accurately, get to know that person, learn what makes them tick, and provide them with the right solution, product, service, whatever it is. I genuinely feel like, a lot of times I feel like I'm so repetitive and broken record and preachy about it. And it makes me feel like I might piss some people off here and there. I don't care. The more I say it, the more it resonates to me, the more it resonates to everybody else around me, to the point where I have people that'll be like, "Hey, I heard your other day, you were exactly spot on." Like, that's cool these days. I like to hear that, but not to boost my ego, but to feel like there's engagement. And again, you start a new distribution effort, you start a new job, you start a new anything. You want engagement. And it's what makes it such a big word, especially to me, right? The mantra of the station, Talk Radio NYC, uplift, educate, empower, all very positive things. I consider when I'm talking to somebody about the competition in the industry, that's an education moment. That's not a let me strike them down moment. Let me say something debilitating or belittle them somehow. It has nothing to do with that. There is a fair amount of education about my travels, my colleagues' travels, my space, my industry, but again, I try not to make it about me, myself, and I. Sometimes those words come out. These are a lot of times where we meet in the middle. It's share my story, share your story, see where our stories meet in the middle. And that's why I love hosting a show every week and doing it live, even though it can be a pain compared to the way that some other people do it. Your doorman rings the bell, your landscapers come here and start blowing leaves around during your show, like happened earlier today. But a lot of it is more genuine. Even when the internet goes out to my house and I have to scramble to get back on the air and the guest has to talk amongst themselves for a minute, it's all right. Shit happens.
I mean, authenticity and sharing and relating to people, I think, are uh, extremely valuable, and and that people will take the time to understand, that you will take the time to understand what it is your prospective customer or even prospective referral to someone else, what their needs are, and then try to figure out a way in which you can actually respond to that, connect them with someone who can respond to that in the way that they need, that they've conveyed, because you took the time to listen and they weren't just another number. They weren't just someone else who was going to be, another sale for you. Uh, that's an incredibly valuable thing. So,
I'll leave you with this. This is an old Native American proverb, and since I don't speak certain languages really all that well, I'll give you the English translation of it. It says, "Tell me a fact and I'll learn," which is similar to even you being in law school, let's say, or my wife. "Tell me a truth and I'll believe," which is similar to you or my wife if you're litigating something, being in the courtroom, and tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, fine, whatever. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. That's the kind of stickiness that I'm looking for with my referral sources, with my colleagues, with my partners, with my clients. I want what I tell them and what we talk about together from their side of the table, from my side of the table, to live in their heart forever so we can always connect with each other about it. And that's it.
I love that. Well, you can contribute to the story by listening to Always Friday on Fridays at 11 a.m. You can also reach out to Steve Fry, and I'm sure we can get your contact information, or you probably have some super way to do that on your screen. But you should reach out to Steve Fry for your HR and other needs for your small and medium-sized business, or if you're interested in being a guest on his show. And our conversation will continue because there's clearly a lot of engagement to be happening between us here, and we really didn't have in the 1 hour live slot here enough time to fully engage as much as I would have loved to. But I love what I got, and that's the best part.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you for having me on, Matthew. You want to reach me at Engage, SFREY at engagepeo.com. You want to reach me from my show, it's SMB Guy at Always Friday. That's FREYDAY.com. Or you can hit me on my cell, 732-690-5359. I've had it since college. It ain't changing.
And all of those stalker calls about buying something, or
I get them anyway, dude. It doesn't matter.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. You've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc. We are here every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Matthew.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership